few months ago, I was having coffee with our own Larrissa Hinman. And by the way, if you've never sat down and had a conversation over coffee with Larrissa, you should. It's something that I think everyone should experience at least once over the course of their lives. I don't recall exactly how the conversation turned to this subject, but we eventually came to discuss the topic of fathers and fatherhood more generally. I've always had a great respect for Larissa's insight in many areas. But as we spoke on the subject of fathers, there was a special earnestness and a passion in her words as she spoke of her own experiences of fatherhood, coming from the perspective of a daughter and a mother. It was a moving conversation, and it actually inspired me to ask Larrissa to speak on the subject here from this pulpit on Father's Day. I really appreciate Larrissa being willing to come before all of us to share from her heart these memories and sentiments. So let's all give her a warm welcome this morning.
Hello, happy Father's Day, and thank you so much for having me. So before I start, can I just tell you what bugs me about Father's Day? As you saw my beautiful children make a scene this morning, what bugs me the most about this whole situation is that I carried them in my body for 10 months. 9 months is a myth, just by the way. 10 months. I nursed them for a year and a half. And you know who their favorite person is? Happy Father's Day! But let me tell you why this doesn't bug me too much. It was nothing short of incredible luck that I was born to a handsome, strong, and kind man who was both loving and lovable father. My first memories of my father include me as a little child sitting in the palm of his hand, facing him, my small hands wrapped around his huge biceps. He was so strong that he could lift me up and down with his one hand if he were curling a dumbbell. I actually remember counting individual muscles in his arm as each of them flexed in turn as he lifted me up and down, up and down. I recall my mother saying, "You know, you will not be able to do this forever," probably to me. "You're right," my dad replied. "Someday I may need to use both hands, but she will always find support in me." My father was an officer in the Russian army and had to be absent a lot. Nevertheless, when he was home, he was always fully engaged. Dad went to all my dance recitals, school plays, even the most boring math competitions. I still can't balance the checkbook, by the way. Sorry. My dad was incredibly proud of my most minor accomplishments. When I got in trouble in school, which I got in trouble in school a lot, it was my father, not my mother, who went to meet with my teachers and the principal. He taught me how to ride a bike, how to swim, how to do fractions, but there are two lessons that he taught me that resonate with me to this day. First, do the right thing. Stand up for your friends, even when it's wrong. One time at school, a boy seated at the desk in front of me was teasing my friend. He was laughing and rocking in his chair. I was so mad how joyful he was for making my friend cry that I got up and pulled the chair from underneath him. The boy fell hard, ended up with a bloody nose. I got into so much trouble. But no one dared to mess with me or my friends after that. My father, true to form, put on his uniform. He looked very formidable in it. He went to meet he went to the school. He met with the teachers. He met with the administrators. He even met with the boy in question. After learning the whole story, he promised them that he would bestow the toughest punishment on me. I went home shaking with fear. When I got home, my father looked at me and said, "Fear is the beast that you have to conquer." Then he said, "Now I'm going to teach you how to kick a chair from underneath somebody without them ever knowing it." The second important lesson I learned from my father: know your worth and have self-esteem. When I was 11 years old, like many 11-year-olds, my dissatisfaction with my appearance was all-encompassing. I would constantly talk about how I hated the way I look. Finally, one day, Dad told me, I was born beautiful, and everyone knows I'm beautiful. But if I tell them that I'm ugly, then everyone will treat me as such. He forced me to sit in front of a mirror and say 11 times, "I'm beautiful," without ever cracking a smile, breaking down in tears. It was so hard to do. I begged him not to make me do it. It was one of the hardest psychological exercises I have ever endured. But because of that exercise, because of my father, I learned how to see myself as beautiful. As I said earlier, I was incredibly lucky to be a daughter of such a great dad. But my good fortune got even better when I chose Brett to be my husband, because he became the most wonderful father I have ever met. When Brett and I started talking about getting married, Brett wanted to ask my dad for my hand in marriage. Unfortunately, it was only possible via Skype, with me acting as a translator. I remember how excited my daddy was when he saw Brett on the screen. He kept talking loudly, laughing, joking. I had to interrupt him to tell him that Brett had a very important question for him. Dad laughed even louder and he yelled, "If she chose you and she called you mine, you have no choice but to be hers." And he said, "And you're one lucky SOB," except he didn't say SOB. He also said something like, "Why are you still talking to me? You'll make me beautiful grandbabies, so go make me some grandbabies. I am ready to be a grandfather." Which is exactly what I did. As Brett held a baby in his arms for the first time, the feeling of enormous love was overwhelming. Seeing my strong, sometimes stoic husband cry for the first time was my greatest source of joy. Every day, Brett blesses our family with too many selfless, loving gestures to even count. Every day, everything he does with our daughters, every word he speaks to them, is filled with love and encouragement. But one example that I will never forget happened back when I was still breastfeeding Sabella and Sophia was still very little. The entire family fell ill with horrible virus. Needless to say, physically, it was a very challenging time. I was beyond exhausted. My wonderful hubby sent me to bed while he stayed up with our girls, trying to soothe them, rocking them in my nursing chair. In the morning, when I got up rested, I found Brett cradling both girls in his arms. All three were asleep in my rocking chair. From these two fathers, my dad and Brett, I've learned so much. I have learned that when raising a child, in addition to kindness and encouragement, sometimes the most beneficial lessons need to be a little bit harsh. I have learned how father's love can help a little girl know she's beautiful. I have learned that acts of love, especially memorable, when one's well-being is compromised, because of those acts of love are also acts of sacrifice. To all of you who are blessed to be a father, but especially to those who are fathers of young women, I would like to give you these words of insight from a daughter and a mother. The most important thing you can do for your child is to be there. Be there and be blessed with the purest form of love there is. Please know, she will love you forever. And when you are gone, she will miss you forever. Your children are your legacy and your blessing.